Hey all, Brandon here with a look at my full trailer build from start to finish. This is the first time I built anything like this. I learned a ton, made a few mistakes, but overall I'm pretty pleased with how this turned out. It's a really comfortable trailer and it's got everything we need for a great trip. I started with a basic 7x14 cargo trailer. It's basically a steel frame wrapped in aluminum with wooden panels on the walls. These wooden panels were simply screwed into the steel structure. That made removal pretty easy. The wooden paneling was great for the interior, but I wanted to get some insulation in the walls to make this camper more comfortable across seasons. This rigid foam insulation was easy to cut to fit between the steel studs. It just took a lot of measuring and cutting. After a few hours, I got the walls and the ceiling insulated. It's probably not enough for extreme weather, but it makes a big difference on warm days and cold nights. Next up is wiring this camper for power. I'm running wires for a few AC outlets and the DC lights and fans. It started out pretty messy before getting them secured at the top of the walls. Time to reattach the wall panels with the newly added outlet boxes. I marked all the panels with their location and saved all the screws, so it was a pretty easy job. Finally, I just needed to add some outlets. To install a vent fan, I needed to cut a hole in the roof of my trailer. This was easily one of the most stressful parts. Cutting a precise hole, potentially causing leaks, and doing it all from the top of a ladder. There's lots of ways for this to not go well. Luckily, it went really smoothly and the hole was exactly the right size. I attached the vent fan unit with some adhesive and screws. It worked well right out of the gate. The plan here was to install shiplap to the ceiling, but I didn't want to attach them with the big metal screws. So I added these 1x2s that the shiplap can be attached to. The 1x2s made the shiplap really easy to install with the nail gun. I think I would have done something different with the seam here if I had to do it over again, probably offsetting the seam for each row from the one next to it. This took some time to get installed, but it paid off. Having never done this before, I was pleasantly surprised. I really like the idea of not needing a power hookup all the time, and I wanted to learn more about solar systems. So I added 4 100-watt panels to the roof of the camper. I attached these by running bolts through the roof and into some supporting wood, which was attached to the steel frame. This was meticulous work, made even harder by having to do it on the top of a ladder. I made sure to seal up all the holes well. I'm hopeful it stays leak-free, but so far so good. If I had to do this over again, I'd probably attach some kind of frame to the roof that the panels could be attached to, and then I could replace them or adjust them as needed. My power system is a pretty standard setup. This inverter is a pure sine wave inverter, which really makes a difference for sensitive electronics. These cheap lead-acid batteries were a great way to get this project working, but I'll be looking to replace them with lithium eventually. I added some basic wiring, some fuses, and an MPPT charge controller. It should be enough to handle the load for most trips. Adding windows makes this trailer much more open and comfortable. The installation was pretty straightforward too. I just cut a hole for the size of the window, then the window screws in from the other side. Then I repeated the process for the second window. The two windows in the back are high over the bed and table area to let light in, but keep some privacy. I added a third window too. This one was across from the door and right above the sink. So this open area will eventually have a bathroom for the shower and toilet, and a kitchen area with a sink, a countertop, and cabinets. The counter was built with a simple 2x2 frame attached to the walls. I built some plywood countertops that would fit the curved wall in the front of the trailer. I glued on a white laminate top, then used the router to trim off the excess. It might have been a good idea to clamp this piece down while I was working on it. A few screws will secure these in place and keep the seam tight. I really like the sealed exposed wood layers on the counter edges. This countertop needed a kitchen sink installed into it as well. So I cut a hole, added some sealant, and dropped in the sink. I'm very happy with the way these countertops turned out. The only other major structural change was adding the bathroom. I framed out a few walls and added a very thin panel on each side. It's a big room for a little camper, which is mostly for the shower. I added a little cutout above the shower for the fan. The sink, shower, and toilets all needed a place to empty into, so I added a black tank and a gray tank. Attaching them isn't too complex, but I did alter my strategy a few times. They're certainly not going anywhere now. The toilet is going right over the black tank, so I drilled out a hole and added some grommets to connect the plumbing and the vent pipe to the tank. Then it's just a matter of connecting the supply hose to the toilet and attaching it to the plumbing. The shower is going to take up the rest of the space in this bathroom. I drilled a hole for the drain, which will attach to the basin. I screwed in the basin and added a waterproof seal over the screws. Then I used a waterproof seal over every edge. I cut some FRP board into panels and glued them onto the walls and ceiling. It's a pretty good shower. I'm not a small dude and it fits me nicely. To supply the water to the trailer, I added this intake panel. This will let me fill up a tank and use a pump, or just use city water. Inside, it connects to my pump and my tank. I added a propane water heater, which took me a little while to figure out how to use. It was a great feeling to get running water draining into my tanks. Both the gray and black tanks needed a vent, so I ran this pipe up through the roof. I had to snake it around a little due to the location of the solar panels. This flooring was a transformative improvement. It took very little time to cut and lay these planks. Cutting around the bathroom plumbing wasn't too hard either. Like I said, this was a transformative change. I added these benches in the back as part of my bed and table system. Eventually, I decided to remove the doors for easier access. The table is a cheap butcher block I found that I sanded and added hardware to. I even learned to sew a little by creating these cushions. They're a little thick, but they turned out pretty good. It converts pretty easily into a nice little bed. Turned out pretty comfy. I struggled to find a way to cover the plywood walls without adding a bunch of weight to the trailer. This vinyl flooring turned out to be a solid win. I cut out sections and then glued them to the wall just like you'd glue them to the floor. The biggest challenge was measuring it right and trimming the excess. Then I added some white trim on all the edges. This change really leveled up the trailer. I've got this DC fridge that I want under the cabinet, so I built a sliding drawer for it. Above it, I added another drawer. I cut and painted some plywood sections for the cabinet facing. Attaching these sections with the hardware finished these cabinets nicely. I added another cabinet section to the top. Both the back wall and the ceiling were curved, so this was tough to get flush. I put this thin face on the front of the cabinet. Then I attached the cabinet hardware. It might be the lens, but those doors look like they need squaring up. The kitchen turned out really good. It looks clean and open. The painted walls in the bathroom made it feel much bigger. I did some trim to the ceiling and baseboard, which were the finishing touches that this trailer needed. Thanks for watching. This was a big project for me, and I was happy to share it with you. Hope I gave you some cool ideas, and maybe you can avoid some of my mistakes. I've got some new projects in the works, so be sure to subscribe if you want to see some more beef-free builds, and I'll be posting some trailer excursion videos as well. Thanks for watching.